A big welcome to everybody who's joining us from near and far. Hopefully people are getting let in and are able to see the screen that I'm sharing. I'm waving from the side. My name's Steele Wagstaff. I'm the customer experience lead at Pressbooks, and I'll be leading today's webinar. For those of you who registered in advance, you probably know this is called Jumpstart Your OER Publishing Program, and we put together a really exciting panel and hope to have a lively and engaging conversation today. Just to kind of give you a sense or an overview of what's happening, we have in this webinar, there's set up where if you're new to Zoom, you'll see at the bottom, there are two tools. If you click the More button, you should see the option for a chat. The chat is where we're going to do some informal things. So if you're joining this webinar from afar or from near, please introduce yourself. You can let us know who you are, where you're joining from, anything else you want to share. That's going to be a social space, and you can feel free to talk to one another or just ask and post questions in the chat that are kind of comments and questions for the group. There are also going to be things that you'll want to ask the panelists, the people who are presenting and talking, and we will have time for a structured Q&A at the end. If you want to ask a question that you would like a panelist to address, there's a little button at the bottom of your Zoom panel that has a kind of a talking box with the question mark in it that says Q&A. That's where you can pose questions that will go to the Q&A forum. They'll be moderated, and we'll be able to ask them of the panelists at that appropriate time of the webinar. Anybody have questions about those two things? Great. I see people are already using the chat to introduce themselves and say who they are and where they're from. Great to see so many of you, and thank you for you got that figured out. You probably have seen a little button now if you're new to the Zoom, seeing the ability to see those chat responses and participate there. All right, so the first thing I want to say is we've got a really exciting lineup of panelists today. I'll introduce them briefly, and then they'll talk a little bit later, but we have David Tully from North Carolina State. He's joining us. He's the principal librarian for student affordability there at North Carolina. And then Chelsea James from Pima Community College. She's the Open Educational Resources and Course Materials Director, doing really interesting work at the community college level. We have Jennifer Jordan, the OER librarian and assistant professor at the University of New Mexico, also doing work not just at the University of New Mexico, but across the state of New Mexico in kind of a consortial model. And last but not least, we have Robert Lawson, who works at Northwest College as an educational developer in the Teaching and Learning Center, but also has been really involved in a province-wide consortial effort called Open Education Alberta. So we got 4 people with some really interesting perspectives representing a pretty wide array of institutional sizes, institutional emphases, both from community college all the way up to kind of provincial consortia. And hopefully there'll be something from their perspective for almost all of you in attendance today. Before we jump in, though, we have a little poll, and I've asked Jen, who's helping me run the chat. She's going to try to launch this poll in Zoom, and you should see now the ability to answer 2 simple questions. And so this is just to give us a sense of who's in attendance today, so we know who our audience is and what their role is and their experience level. It can help us to kind of tailor our remarks where appropriate to who you are and what level of experience you already have in the field. So we'll take a couple of seconds and fill in those 2 questions, and then Jen will display the answers here shortly. Oh my, we've got somebody joining us from 3 a.m. Andy Gibson, dedicated. Didn't want to wait for the recording. They came at 3 a.m. Bravo. All right, and so we can see the results. If this has probably just popped up for you. It looks like a little over half of the audience today are librarians. Awesome. Thank you. Way to represent librarians. About 20% are educators broadly. Another 15% are education administrators, and then a smattering of instruction designers, publishers, and learning technologists. In terms of the experience level, it's distributed pretty evenly. We've got a few intermediate and novices, and then about a quarter of the people say they're advanced, and 4% of people say no experience at all. So that's really interesting. Hopefully this will be a good introduction to the conversation and some of the work that's happening there. Are there any questions or things that I missed in the chat that I need to address before we jump in? Okay, great. Well, so what we'd like to do, just a little bit of framing. I think this was kind of a fun exercise for me. I said, I went and I used generative AI, and I gave it a little bit of some prompting and some discussions to generate a slide image for me. And what it generated was this, which At a distance, it looks really interesting. You're like, oh, wow, how to get there from here to go from where I'm at now. Maybe it's a grassroots effort led by Goodwill, and I want to get to the mountaintop where I've got sustainable, well-built OER. And you'll notice if you zoom in and look at the details here, a lot of them are pretty messy. There's misspellings and lots of other stuff happening. You may find that's actually representative of what the actual work in OER on the ground is. But the basic idea is a lot of us working in the field realize that a successful OER initiative or open publishing initiative takes a lot of effort. Sometimes the institution itself is new to this, they're curious, they think maybe we'll hire a person or give them part of a job duty, and that will help us solve this problem. And as we get into the work, we realize there's a lot of details. Goodwill will take us a long way, idealism will take us a long way, but transitioning from good intentions to a sustainable program that has institutional support and that can be run without burning the goodwill out is challenging, and it takes some negotiation. And so that's what we've asked our panelists to help address and talk about. We don't have all the answers, but we do have a pretty broad range of experience here, and we're excited to hear from people representing a broad kind of spectrum of positions. The first person who's going to be presenting, I'll have it start off, and I'm going to pass it over to David from North Carolina State.
Thank you so much, Still. It's good to be here today and be part of this panel. And thank you everybody for joining us from across the globe, it seems like. So that's really, really exciting. My name is David Tully. I work at NC State University Libraries as the principal librarian for student affordability. I've been with the libraries now for about, I think about 12 years or so through a few different roles, but I've been focusing very heavily on open education since about 2019. My specific job is based in the Open Knowledge Centre, but I also have a dotted line to our development department as well. And sometimes those roles intersect, where I fundraise for open education initiatives and things along those lines. So to talk about NC State, I mean, above all, our primary goal is to empower students for a lifetime of success and impact. On this particular slide, I've outlined what this means in practical terms. And as you can see, sort of high on our list of priorities is increasing affordability and access to what we think of as essential educational resources. So things like textbooks, media, and technologies. In truth, the libraries have been just very intentional for many years about recognizing and actually embracing our critical role in just supporting the holistic development of students. And we think, by helping to address these needs, we can help to just create a campus environment where students can thrive academically and personally. And we try to advance that goal through several initiatives. So we've had a very robust technology lending program for many years. We've had a physical lending program since about 2009. And obviously, like many of you, wherever possible, we've tried to, provide ebook copies of textbooks to ensure students have access to the materials that they need. Additionally, positions like mine have been created to help place the libraries at that kind of like the forefront of student affordability as regards to textbooks and tech. And obviously this focus stems from, understanding that just many courses still continue to rely heavily on textbooks, and research just consistently shows that students who have regular access to their course materials are better positioned to succeed academically. Next slide, please. Oh, there we go. So maybe the greatest example of how the libraries has approached student affordability is through our alt textbook program. So this is an OER grant initiative that was launched back in 2014. At the time, programs like this were, somewhat rare, making us one of the, the pioneers in the field. This year, we celebrated our 10th anniversary, which we're very excited about. To give you a very brief sort of overview of this, we partner with Delta, who are our learning technologists, who are just amazing folks and bring so much to our program. And between us, we offer 4 types of grants, with Adapt Create being the most popular. This work is overseen by a dedicated committee. We meet once a month, but we have 2 grant cycles per year where we evaluate submissions and award grants based upon their merits. Funded projects are then assigned a liaison who serves as a partner and a guide, and whose job it is to essentially ensure the completion of the project. And then additionally, we've also incorporated Pressbooks into the program over the past 2 years. And while our specific license to Pressbooks is limited, to gain access to it, you have to be an alt textbook recipient. Next slide, please, Steele. And I would say that probably nothing, underscores the impact of our program more than the numbers and trends from the last 10 years. So over this time, we estimate that approximately around 125,000 students have used OER that's stemmed directly from our program. And our cost savings now are pretty enormous, estimated around $14 million. So again, this is instructors moving away from commercial textbooks and using freely accessible OER and adapting, creating accordingly, and then students accessing it at no cost. The program has awarded about 104 grants since its inception. About half of those have been awarded in the past 3 years alone. So we have real momentum here at the moment, and crucially, top-down institutional support for OER. 11 colleges, 53 departments have worked with us. And I will share, and Steele is not paying me to say this, that Pressbooks has been a real game changer for our program. It was successful, but it's certainly gone up several gears over the past 2 years since we had access to Pressbooks. So usage itself has increased by 33%. We have 15 titles published, about 40 more that's in development. And student textbook savings from just the past 2 years alone have exceeded the first 8 years of our program. So it's been a real success story here on our campus. I'm at 5 minutes and 20 seconds. So I've just gone over my time, but I'm happy to talk more about that during the rest of the webinar.
That was incredibly fluid. I mean, the extra 20 seconds were well worth it, David. Thank you so much. So thank you. That we heard from David. We'll come back for the Q&A a little bit, but I want to pass it next to Chelsea at Pima Community College. Chelsea, take it away.
Hi, thanks, Jill, and thanks for inviting me. I'm Chelsea James. I'm the OER and Course Materials Director at Pima, and just want to give you a little bit about OER and Pima. Pima is a large multi-campus open enrollment community college. We are in Tucson, Arizona. Our annual headcount is about 37,000. We're a major transfer college, also offering certificates and degree programs for direct employment. We are a designated Hispanic serving institution. Nearly half of our student population identify as Hispanic or Latino. A majority of our students do attend part-time and are both traditional and non-traditional students. They work, they raise families, they balance other responsibilities outside of school. And as a college for the community, with students coming from all walks of life and diverse backgrounds, our commitment to the community is to make education accessible and affordable for all. Pima prides itself on empowering every learner every day for every goal, which is actually our mission. And we do acknowledge that having diverse learners means that learner needs and goals are diverse as well. And so we are committed to ensuring that every learner is provided with quality, relevant education aligned to their needs. Now, we were fortunate to have champions at the administrative level and faculty leadership levels early on, and they were able to connect the work of OER directly to our overall college mission and build OER into our strategic plan. Our OER goals are action steps to achieve that college mission, and it's been clearly outlined for all to see. You can go to the next slide, Steele. And so that path to Pima College OER success at the institutional level, it really started with administrator buy-in. And I can't say enough about the importance of having at least one administrator who's passionate about OER and can be in those top discussions to really embed OER into the strategic plan. In 2017, we were awarded Achieving the Dream Grant. That helped us compensate faculty and really move the needle. And from there, we created an OER task force, and they were the ones who were able to build OER directly into the college strategic plan and recommend the hiring of a dedicated OER director, which was me. but we did still have work to do. What I kept hearing from faculty is that they would love to use OER, but they couldn't find anything or didn't like what was out there, and that was a major barrier. And so that's really when we decided to partner with Pressbooks and build what we branded the Pima Open Digital Press, so that faculty could have that space to adapt, remix, and create material. And we built momentum around Pressbooks in three main ways that you can see here on this slide. First was really individual relationships and grassroots level awareness. I meet with people. I try to show up places. I listen. I have conversations. I help people see how Pima Open Digital Press can help with what they're already doing around course materials and curriculum, or turn their ideas into something tangible. And honestly, I've had some of my greatest impact by just attending and talking to people at campus potlucks, faculty trainings, college events. The second thing we did was to create a formal marketing plan. And I have something I call OER spotlights, and I put them in division newsletters, provost reports, other established communication channels. I present at different workshops. Faculty showcases have been huge for us and well received, where faculty show what they're doing in Pressbooks. I send welcome and update emails to divisions, deans, teams, individuals, table events, and in general, I'm just trying to advertise this new tool to people. One of my hooks, I say, I'm looking for a few people to pilot out a new open publishing platform for OER, and I can help you with any project that you have in mind. Do you have a project? Contact me. Let's chat. Trying to be very approachable and help individuals see that this isn't some new brand or a brand new endeavor, but a tool for things they might already be doing. The third way that we're building momentum may not be sustainable in the long run, so we'll have to rethink it, but I personally have provided a lot of support by importing materials, setting up books, creating virtual trainings for students about CC licensing, and doing one-on-one instructional designing, being a thinking partner. I really don't want people to feel overwhelmed by any project when they're getting started. I've added a selection for Pressbooks support into our IT ticketing system as well. And you can go into a third slide. So we've made a lot of progress that we're very proud of. We have saved students $13 million as of last semester since 2017. We have tremendous faculty buy-in, and 60% of our courses have zero textbook costs. We are able to see that data through a partnership with Barnes & Noble. Right now we have 50 books and 182 users in Pima Open Digital Press. And I realize that, a lot of these will not be published and they're not all regular users, but really what I'm trying to do is get people interested and excited about possibilities. And we've seen a huge movement towards open practices, and doing a data project this next year to measure student success in OER courses. And thanks, Steele.
Thank you, Chelsea. I see there was a couple of questions that have been posed in the Q&A for David, and I'm not sure the last question that came in may be for both David and Chelsea, but someone was asking, with a limited number of licenses available, how do you determine which ones go forward and which ones go on hold? If anybody would like to submit written answers, they can, or we can just hold these until after the last two panelists have presented. So thank you for submitting the questions. The next person I'll pass it to is Jennifer, who's representing both the University of New Mexico and the New Mexico OER Consortium. Go ahead, Jennifer.
Thank you, Steele. My name is Jennifer Jordan, and I am an OER librarian. I started working at the University of New Mexico in 2022. Before that, the OER initiative was mostly sort of like the job of people who already had other jobs. So people they wanted to move OER forward, but they just didn't have as much time. And so then I think the first step for UNM to move the initiative really forward a lot was to have someone work full-time on the initiative. So in 2023, I saw the call for the open textbook pilot program, and we applied for it, and I thought it was a long shot. I contacted a couple of other colleges in New Mexico to develop a consortium, and we all applied together, and we ended up receiving one of the grants for almost $2.125 million. So it goes through December of 2026. And part of the textbook pilot program asks that you create OER with an equity lens. So like Chelsea, UNM is a Hispanic serving institution, but also the other two institutions in the consortium are also HSIs. So part of my job is to help equip faculty with opportunities and resources to develop their materials that are accessible and center marginalized voices and engage traditionally underrepresented students. And these are the three colleges that are in our consortium: Santa Fe Community College and also CNM. UNM and CNM both also have multiple campuses, and Santa Fe has the one campus. Can you move to the next slide, please? So, and then I missed the first bullet. We wanted to develop an OER creation hub to support faculty, and so that was also part of the grant proposal. So our approach to developing the consortium was each campus has their own calls for proposals, they have their own OER committees, and they have their criteria that prioritize savings, impact, and equity. And then at UNM, we've been working in the background to develop and share resources. So we have our ebook platform, Pressbooks. On the front catalog, there are 6 books, but in the background, there's a lot more. There's like about maybe 40 or so books. We're looking to increase the subscription for one of the schools because they already had a lot of materials that they were ready to put onto Pressbooks. So it's moving pretty fast, faster than I had anticipated. We're actually ahead of schedule with regard to the number of like piloted courses that we have, which is just amazing. And then also part of the grant proposal, we're developing a community of practice where we support faculty, we have workshops, and we're making them open to not just people in the consortium. We're inviting other schools in New Mexico so they can learn about OER. Part of the grant proposal, I said that we would enlist other colleges to join us on our journey, and we do have a couple that are interested. And so also to develop the consortium, we're working with the Center for Teaching and Learning at UNM, and they are helping us to revise and develop materials that are accessible for students. And we've learned a lot in the process. Part of what I learned was find your OER advocates and work with them. OER initiatives on different campuses, they aren't always like centered through the library. So like at CNM, Central New Mexico Community College, their OER initiative is centered through their like innovation department, digital innovation department. So find those OER advocates, and then supporting faculty and advocating for them is super important to help them feel supported so they can move forward, because developing an OER is a lot of work, which y'all probably know. Another part of what this whole process includes is I'm like documenting the steps as I move along so that we can duplicate them later and duplicate the process that we're moving through, because we're moving through a lot of steps like really quickly. This is really only maybe like I'm on my 3rd year working here. And then also I think just don't wait for the perfect time. It wasn't the perfect time to apply for the grant in 2023, but we did it anyway. And we ended up getting it, which was amazing. Next slide, please. So I also have this QR code, and this will take you to an article through UNM. And this is just what the OER initiative is set to save UNM students in the 2024-2025 school year. We started supporting faculty with OER in 2023, early 2023, and it's just sort of grown pretty quickly. Through this link, you can also get to like our Pressbooks page, and we have our OER page at UNM. But yeah, I think that's about it. I think my 5 minutes is up, so I'm going to toss it back to Steele. Thank you, though.
Thank you, Jennifer. And I think just in case you missed that, what Jennifer was describing is like one of the more remarkable stories where she was saying, hey, we had this grassroots effort just a couple of years ago. We thought we'd apply for the DOE grant. We thought it was a long shot. And then they ended up being successful, got a couple of $1 million. And the rapidity of growth and the success that I think Jennifer has spearheaded and just bringing together a bunch of interested people has been one of my favorite recent stories. It's a really beautiful story. And I think it's encouraging sometimes because a lot of us feel like, hey, that this is for other people, it's not for us. And sometimes it is for you too. So thanks, Jennifer. And last but not least, we've got we want to hear about Open Education Alberta and a little bit maybe about the Northwest context. So I'll pass it over to you.
Yeah, thanks so much, Steele. And Open Education Alberta is a consortium of 15 institutions across the province, colleges, universities, and polytechnics. And really, we have a twofold mission. The first part is to provide a forum for people to publish open textbooks. And this, as I said, this service is really available to any post-secondary institution in the province. And you'll see a reference to TAL there. TAL is the Alberta Library, and this is an organization, a nonprofit, that represents over 300 libraries in the province. So we've been working very closely with TAL to negotiate the price sharing agreement with Pressbooks. So they've become a very important partner of ours. So that's really the first part. And then the other part is that we want to promote collaboration on open education projects across the province, including OER advocacy, support for OER publishing, and fostering partnerships. And the advocacy component has become more important as we evolve as an organization. We're becoming more active in terms of advocacy and promotion of OER, and that's helping to build the momentum of the organization. Next slide, please. Yeah, so just a brief history of the organization. Really, the initiative began in 2019 with the development of the terms of reference, and really it began with just a handful of institutions, I think about 6, and it was centered around the University of Alberta. And the University of Alberta Library was actually the host for the Pressbooks catalog. Since that time, it has migrated to Pressbooks in Montreal. It really began as a grassroots organization to encourage open publishing. And the OEA publishing program began in 2020. Norquest joined in the fall of 2020. In 2022, we realized that the University of Alberta was no longer capable of hosting the catalog, so we began to establish a sustainability committee to consider movement of Pressbooks from the University of Alberta. And in 2024, we negotiated the new pricing model with the Alberta Library. This is a proportional cost-sharing model. So every institution in the province pays a share based on the number of Pressbooks that they're going to be using. And at Norquest, we've signed up for about 4 textbooks per year. Since that time, we've been actively participating in outreach at the provincial and national levels. And I think that this is an important aspect of our growth. In the past year, the steering committee has hosted panel discussions and have provided updates at the Canadian Association of Research Libraries Open Education Summit. And as of 2024, we have a steering committee and we have a bylaws committee. These are the subcommittees: bylaws committee. We have network managers committee and an outreach committee. And this latter committee is going to engage in further promotion and advocacy for Open Education Alberta. And we hope at some point to have some of the statistics in terms of cost savings that some of the other institutions and consortia have. I can tell you that at Norquest, we've managed to save, since we joined the organization, we've published 8 textbooks, and we've managed to save students about $1.3 million with our OER initiative. So just the next slide, just the impact. We began with a handful of institutions. We now have 15 institutions, 58 titles, 107 titles in progress. We've had close to 500,000 book views, 55,000 downloads. Our most viewed titles you can see there, Willkommen Deutsch, German textbook, and most downloaded Laboratory Guide to Clinical Hematology. It's great to see that under most viewed titles, The Language of Medical Terminology, this is a Norquest textbook, and The Introduction to Communications, so number 2 and 3 are Norquest textbooks. So as a Norquester, I can say that the consortium has been a wonderful opportunity to expand our open education initiatives. And I think a lot of other institutions in the province feel the same way. So lots of things to look forward to in the future as we move forward with more advocacy and promotion.
Robert, thank you so much. So we had a lot of information packed in a relatively short amount of time, and I really appreciate our presenters. All presented really skillfully and told pretty compelling stories in a short amount of time. I noticed a bunch of questions came in the Q&A, and some of them have been answered by text, but there's still a couple. I think, Chelsea, there was one that you wanted to take live. Maybe it was about Barnes & Noble partnership? I can't recall.
Yeah, there were a number of questions about Barnes & Noble that seemed to be a hot topic. And I think I accidentally pressed the wrong button, but I'm happy to talk about it. Yeah, Barnes & Noble has been a partner with us. I value their partnership in many ways. It's also a strange place for me to be OER and course materials. So I am the liaison to Barnes & Noble. I have all of the data from Barnes & Noble, how many, what classes, what's, course numbers, who's using what text they're using. I get all of that data, which has been really great. When we started using Barnes & Noble, we moved from Follett to Barnes & Noble just a few years ago. And within that negotiation, we said we are an OER school. We are promoting this actively, and you need to work with us to help with that. And we want to figure out how we can work with data from your office, and that will shortly be converted. The Barnes & Noble data will be converted to course indicators, and that's where we're going to get that information. And then people had questions, about the equitable access or inclusive access first day. We use first day in individual classes, which has saved students lots of money in individual classes. And I'm all for a professor saying, yeah, we're going to use that digital material in this class. Barnes & Noble has come and done presentations with admin. They have invited me to be there every time about doing the equitable access and, present it. Our business office is sold. It would be very easy. It would make things much easier for everybody. I have had to develop PowerPoints and point out, listen, this is not good for our students. I'm not talking about if it's a good plan or not, but this is not good for our students because we have 60% zero textbook courses, and that would students would be charged, and essentially it increases their tuition, right? Which doesn't make sense for our classes. So I've had to sort of be aggressive and say, I'm going to go to the board and show them this data. This is not good for our students. And so far, our admin is, they get it.
Oh, exciting stories, Chelsea. So the question that I wanted to start with for the panel was, we have our people from a range of different positions. So there's some people that work in libraries. There's some people that are teaching and learning centers or curriculum and learning design experts. And I think one of the threads that I heard in almost every one of your presentations was partnerships are really important. It's not just you working alone, or else you can't do it sustainably. You can't grow if it's just one person with OER as in their title. What led to OER being housed where it is at your institution, and how have you gone about building either partnerships or stakeholder buy-in or getting the support of administrators, as you said, Chelsea? What kind of what strategies have you used to either build partnerships or to make sure that this work can be shared by multiple people in your institution? I think probably Chelsea and Robert in particular would want to hear from you, and then if Jennifer and David have other things they want to add.
Yeah, and I mean, this goes into why why admin sort of listened to me about when I talked about Barnes and Noble, right? My role as OER director is uniquely housed in the office of the provost, which I am a librarian, but I'm not in the library. We have an OER librarian as well who has part of her time, but this was a new position a little over a year ago, and because we have such support at an administrative level, it's in our strategic plan, they decided that this position should be housed under instruction and not just within one department. So I'm under the Office of the Provost, Faculty Affairs and Development, and that has really made it easier for me. I don't have to work as hard just to get to the table. Right? I'm already at the table. The provost, is aware of all of my updates, whereas I'm not sure they would be if I was housed in the library or elsewhere. I have my leadership team is the Faculty Resource Center, the Executive Director of Teaching and Learning Center, and Faculty Qualifications. That has really helped to be at the table when we're talking about faculty professional development, faculty hiring, onboarding of faculty, and those types of things. I'm already there, right? I don't have to push my way to the table, and that's been really helpful to ensure OER is prioritized.
Oh, totally. Thanks, Chelsea. Robert or anyone else have anything they want to add on that question?
I think for us, OER, at least in terms of Northwest, really took off with the development of a vision that we created in 2020 called Reimagine Higher Education. And I think that laid out very clearly certain milestones that we wanted to achieve. And once administration saw that and saw that we were achieving a lot of those milestones in terms of publication, then I think that really helped to build the momentum. And when they started to see, some of the success that we were having with our open textbooks in terms of downloads and things, that started to help build the momentum as well. So,
Robert, who was the we that came up with that vision at Northwest?
the we is I.
Okay, that's what I wanted you to kind of clarify, because I think a lot of people, you came up with the vision and then you started
in consultation actually with a couple other people, because we do have an OER steering committee. I drafted the initial vision, and then there was input from a couple other people. And then, it's funny because in that vision statement, we actually imagined hosting OE Global, but that was kind of a fantasy for us. We didn't think we'd actually do it. And then we did it. So I think that really encouraged a lot of the administration as well to start paying attention to our open initiatives.
Yeah, really interesting story. Thank you. Jennifer, maybe it's a similar question for you. I know that it was the we was maybe a you at one point as well, and it became something bigger. What were the key partnerships that you built and established at the beginning?
So when I started at UNM, the OER initiative was being moved forward sort of more informally through a working group that included people from the library, people from information technology, and then people from the Center for Teaching and Learning. But I was doing like the bulk of the work, moving stuff forward earlier on. And then once we had the grant, once I was able to hire people like a program coordinator, then I could move some of the work that I was doing out to other people. And I was able to like move the work out of my head and like share it with other people so that they could move it forward.
Terrific, thank you. I think another question that came up was a lot of you are kind of presenting the slides as here's some major past accomplishments you've made, and you're at a point where now you've had some success and you have some growth, and I can point to your catalog and we can see a bunch of finished books. But a lot of people that are attending are much earlier in that journey. They're like getting started or at the beginning. What were some of the best decisions, or maybe the single best decision you made early in that OER journey that helped you get to the success that you've established now? Maybe I'll start with David on this question.
Yeah, I'm happy to chime in on this one. So for some context, I spoke about the old textbook project earlier on. That was about 5 years old when I joined it. So I can't take any of the credit, unfortunately, for it getting off the ground and its initial success. But when I sort of became part of that program back in 2019, obviously recognizing that it was successful, I thought it had so much more potential. So figuring out how to kind of elevate it, and by way of letting instructors know about its availability and also the different things that it can do, was one of my goals. And around the same time, we had a campus visit from OpenStax. And we obviously had the chance to sit down with them. They spoke to our provosts, faculty and students and that sort of thing. But we had a chance to sit down with them and talk about some strategies. And what they advised me was to think more like a salesman, believe it or not, which initially kind of horrified me because I'm a librarian. I'm not a salesman. I didn't go into it with that in mind. But with that in mind, it's been by far our most effective tactic. So by sales, I mean more like direct outreach. So rather than, less of creating workshops and meetings for faculty to attend, which they just weren't, to be honest with you, it was more so looking at the list that we had from the bookstore. So which instructors are using which titles, what are the top 20 most expensive textbooks being used on campus, comparing it to the available OER that's on the market to see, are there viable alternatives? Are there alternatives that I wouldn't be embarrassed about putting in front of instructors and asking them to have a think about it? And then I would just hit their inboxes. And of course, most don't reply, right? But some do. And then through that comes a meeting, comes another meeting over coffee or lunch. And before you know it, that person is then applying to our program and adopting an OER or adapting one. And then once you have that person, then a colleague's interested. And all of these other doors begin opening. And obviously that combined with just, better publicizing our program, like stories about individual faculty, like recognizing the work that they're doing. Around that time, we brought in faculty awards as well. All of those things were really impactful. I've never quite reached the stage where I'm showing up with donuts or muffins and just being really annoying or that type of thing. I show up when I have an invitation. But I definitely, if you're using a textbook that's over $100, you'll hear from me for sure in the nicest, most polite way possible. The other downside is if you don't drink coffee or tea, you're at a serious disadvantage because usually folks want to meet you for coffee or tea. So I didn't even drink coffee before 5 years ago, and now I'm on 4 cups a day. So that's the downside of this type of work. But yeah, just in general, to be more serious, thinking more in terms of a sales strategy actually seemed to pay off for OER. OER initiatives, I should say, sorry.
So
Go ahead, Jennifer. Yeah.
Yeah, so for that question, I think the best decision that I made, I started creating OER in 2015 at a different college, and I wasn't ready to do it at all. And I didn't even know what a Creative Commons license was, but I wanted my students to have the materials for class. They weren't buying them. So, I mean, I think the best advice I have is just don't wait until you're totally completely ready. Just move it forward. We ended up saving students like a couple $100,000 right out of the gate at my other college. And then that helped to prepare me for the job that I have now. So
I love it. I think That's the spirit of what a lot of open education is. It's doers. It's like, hey, we're going to try this, and we did it, and then we have a story to tell. Chelsea, you mentioned in yours something I want to echo on, because David mentioned I'm not a salesperson, I'm a librarian, but marketing or outreach was helpful. You mentioned marketing specifically in your presentation about telling the stories and helping people see, expanding maybe their sense of the possible. How did that come about, and what's your emphasis been on storytelling about successes at Pima?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is just building awareness and opening people's minds to possibilities, right? And I mean, I have spotlighted different stories of faculty, of students. I have, put pictures of the students, things. I mean, stories are powerful, right? And it gets people to pay attention. And um, I mean, I don't know what I don't, if I just sat here in my office, I mean, I could sit here in my office and do my data stuff and, anybody, and nobody would ever know that I exist and never know anything about OER. I feel like my biggest that is my job, to market, and let people know what possibilities are out there. So I'm always trying to figure out, like, can I put a sticker here? Can I get a student to talk about it? Yeah, I'm not sure if that answered the
No,
question
I think it does.
exactly, but
And I was going to say that resonates really deeply with me from the work I did before being at Pressbooks. When I was at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, we were doing a grassroots publishing program as well. And I remember part of what drew me into open publishing was I was supporting teaching and learning. I had been a teacher myself, and I would go to these. Actually, it was a less commonly taught languages program, and I went to one of their like faculty meetings, and I heard like 5 or 6 people talking about, there's a guy who was teaching Tibetan. He's one of the few people who teaches Tibetan in the country. He loves the language, he loves the culture, and there was no commercially available textbook. And he was talking about over the last 10 years, he had spent hours building this Word document. That was his textbook. And he was really struggling. He's like, how do I get interactive quizzes into Word? And he was like, all these ingenious things that he was trying to do. And the answer was, you don't. Microsoft Word's not built for that. But if we provided the right tools for you, maybe we could. And when we presented about the capabilities of Pressbooks, where we found a tool for them, it was like, oh yeah, this is what we've been looking for. And if we hadn't got out and met those people, we would have just never connected. Finding the need and finding the tool and finding the match is a really gratifying part of this work. But it does involve going out and listening and offering it.
I mean, adding on to that, that was one of our, we have a lot of awareness about OER, but I keep hearing people say, I can't find anything. I don't like anything, and I think that there's a gap in the understanding of what OER's potential is. I like the saying Dr. Wiley says, replacing a commercial text with OER is like driving a plane down the street. Can it be done? Sure, it can be done, but a plane is meant to fly, and OER is meant to be flexible and fly like that. And that's why we decided to partner with you, Steele, is that I saw Pressbooks as this vehicle to get our plane up in the air, right? And to be able to go out and market, hey, look, we have this tool. Here's how it's going to make that OER text that you don't really like or you have problems with it, you can remix it. And and that was part of the marketing, right?
Totally.
I've been using Pressbooks to market that.
Yeah, and I think this is maybe a key point that I want to ask people about, because one of the things you learn about once you get into open education is granting of the permissions is part of what happens with an open license, but actually exercising those permissions and remixing and revising and adapting the material to the needs of your learners is what makes open licenses really powerful, not just the cost savings, but the ability to customize text. Now, there are a lot of obstacles that people may encounter in that process, from an open license PDF, hard to edit, right? We've all experienced that, to not having the right tools or the right skills or the right resources. What were some of the major obstacles that you've encountered over the last or the beginning parts of your journey? And how did you handle those blockers? That's kind of a general question to folks. Instead of just the positive, what have been some hard things and how did you work through them?
Well, I think I mentioned in my first statement is I prioritized spending time, and I recognize that my only position is OER director and course materials. So we have that luxury, but I have spent a lot of time helping faculty to get started, importing the book. Here, let me set you up. Here's the book. Here's how you can, now you can go in. I've added you in. I even helped somebody, convert a giant Word document to get it in, and showed them how to put the images in. We have had conversations about a vision of student showcasing, and I created some modules for students CC licensing. And so I've really been there's a lot of I think our faculty are overwhelmed because it's hard. I mean, it takes time. And so if I can pull out those kind of time sucks and be like, all right, here's your blank slate, or here's your, your book. Now you can do the fun part. That's been sort of how I've addressed the obstacle you're talking about.
Thanks. That getting started part and the initial onboarding training can be the most time consuming. I'll put a link. We offer, if they are using Pressbooks, not everyone is, we offer free monthly webinars for faculty, that getting started and then some advanced topics. And I'll put that link in there in the chat. Other people, some obstacles that you encountered early on and how you kind of worked through them. Robert, at Norquest, you talked about going from being a kind of committee of one and then having to prove some of your successes. What were some of the challenges you faced early in that process?
Yeah, some of the challenges we faced were convincing faculty. I think this is sort of a universal challenge, is just convincing faculty that OER are as good in terms of the quality as publisher resources. That was a big hurdle for us, particularly in the business program at Norquest. And then mapping out a clear process for textbook development. It began as a grassroots initiative, and we found that we ran into some confusion as to when the editing should take place, when the formatting should take place, the peer review, all of that. And so we've spent a good deal of time in the fall trying to map out a clear process for faculty to follow so that we don't have misunderstandings in terms of when things are supposed to be submitted and developed.
The actual process of going from idea to the final steps of publication can often be the trickiest and the most time consuming. And
yeah, absolutely.
David or Jennifer, anything that you'd want to add that came to mind as this conversation was progressing?
Well, yeah, I mean, the challenge right now is how to measure impact with equitable access kind of being put into place. That's like the first huge major obstacle that I've encountered in my years at UNM, which I guess that's pretty good if that's my first huge obstacle, but it feels kind of insurmountable because with the grant, I said we would save students a certain amount of money, and it was like actual dollars. And so when you're dealing with equitable access and they say they're saving students money, it's like based on the inflated price of their textbooks. And so the challenge for me is, how do I measure impact when the way that I can measure it has completely changed? And I'm in the middle of that right now, so I don't really have an answer, but I do
Really
think
interesting. Yeah.
that a lot of colleges are gonna have to deal with if they're not dealing with it right now.
Yeah, and I think this is a question maybe for those of you further along, that measuring impact means different things to different people. Almost all of you have a dollar amount on your slides. We all know the reason for that, right? That's important to certain administrators. But then once you've done the work for a while, you're like, well, what matters to me isn't necessarily the dollar savings. It's a bit more of the what was the impact on the student experience, or what was the impact on teaching and learning, or what was the impact on joy, or whatever. Like, what kind of things are you thinking about in terms of demonstrating value or measuring impact besides just dollar figures? David, you're about to speak. I think I cut you off earlier.
Yeah, no, it's just a thought that I had, but I know it's been voiced by several faculty to me who've been using Pressbooks of late. Is that, the statistics that you can get from using an authoring tool like this in terms of numbers of viewers, and so on. And obviously, and if you use Google Analytics as well, you can get more of the geographical spread. That stuff is really important when it comes to promotion and tenure. And instructors, who often, let's face it, do often do not get the appropriate credit that they deserve for their efforts, because, and I think Chelsea, you mentioned this just now. These things take a really long time, and we're very transparent with that with our awardees, and we're very ambitious timelines when proposals are submitted to us, and we've been around the block multiple times. So, the amount of effort that is put in is not insignificant most of the time. So things like being able to capture from an instructor's perspective the usage outside of campus is really important, I think. And just, I don't see our job, at the libraries as, just obviously we used it in our slides, those dollar amounts are important in terms of demonstrating impact. But there's also a sort of a post-sales care aspect as well, that, we want to appropriately recognize the work that takes place, because too often it does get overlooked.
I love that. Yeah. Well, I think, and this came up maybe in Robert's slides as well, where Robert was saying, like, here's the cost figures over here, but also here's the number of page views and here's the number of times the files were downloaded. I remember being a graduate student and writing something that I knew would be read by like a dozen people. It was really discouraging. Why would I want to spend 3 years on that? And then to be able to see hundreds of thousands of views and thousands of downloads, that feels, I mean, knowing that your work has an impact can be really gratifying for people that are producing new knowledge. So that's a great point, I think, that you brought up, David. Robert, I saw you nodding. Was there something you wanted to contribute there or add?
That has really helped us to encourage faculty to develop OER, just the number of views and downloads that they can receive. I mean, a lot of them do ask that question about compensation and why should I do this if it's free? And then we tell them, well, your book could be used right across the country, maybe internationally. And that really does have a positive impact.
It's the good kind of vanity, right? Is that what we're doing? So I think we're running close to the end of time. The last question maybe is just, as providers of wisdom, what are the key kind of learnings or actionable takeaways that you wanted to share with attendees? If they remember nothing else, anything you wanted to share as a final takeaway?
I can just share that I think we've had the most momentum by getting faculty to see a vision and be excited about it and see how their students could be involved, and how collaborations between different departments on a book and so forth. So I think I'm trying to make it not a chore, but a really cool kind of creative endeavor, right?
Jennifer, you're unmuted. Anything you wanted to add or say as final remarks?
Don't lose heart. Keep
Oh,
keep moving forward. And yeah, like the relationships that you make, like you can help each other to move things forward. Like when you get disheartened, like faculty are amazing to work with, and just supporting them and advocating for them, and they will definitely like return the favor.
so true. Thank you. Robert or David, any final thoughts?
I certainly echo everything that Chelsea and Jennifer have just said, and I'll only add that though it can feel lonely at times, this type of work, right? There are those moments. Just recognizing that there is a community out there of folks performing similar work to yourselves. And I've always found it a very friendly and helpful community when I've reached out to librarians or even educators elsewhere. So, I don't be shy to reach out, because everybody I've met doing this type of work is very friendly, and is more than willing to engage and just provide some advice when necessary. and you can learn a lot from each other. It's not necessarily a question of you always learning from the other person. They can also learn a lot from you as well. So there's listservs that are right there, and there's communities of support that are right there. So feel free, and myself always feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions or needs. I'll be happy to meet with you.
Yeah, OER people are the nicest people to work with. I'm completely biased, but
I would tend to agree. I want to say thank you so much to all of our panelists. I enjoyed this conversation. I learned a lot. I already knew going in that I liked you all and was interested in what you had to say, and my positivity and was confirmed. Thank you. You're wonderful. Thank you everyone for attending and for the great questions and the really robust conversation in the chat. Hopefully this conversation will continue. Hopefully we can continue to be of use to one another and provide mutual aid where it's needed. We will wrap this up. We'll end this meeting. We'll send out the recording and the follow-up email to everyone who registered. And on behalf of everybody at Pressbooks and everyone on the panel, thank you for being here and thanks for your time. Good luck to everyone.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Yeah, thanks, Robert.
you.